You have like six?
Hello. So I'm here with Doug to talk about Gitmo and other things. It is Tuesday,
Oh,
January 31, 2025. Yes, you know, right? Trump, this has been a joke for like years when the previous Trump administration, I remember Keith Olbermann said, I'll meet you in Gitmo. And now Trump is in fact opening a detention center in Gitmo, or so he says, um, for people he's forcing out of the country. So that's it's not a joke. I mean, the current, I think about it. I mean, the current administration really is a rapist and a Nazi running our country and performing like a cartoonish satire of fascism. It is just appalling. And the whole Republican Party is just in lockstep saying Zig Heil and going along with everything he says. Although from yesterday, it's possible that these latest three appointees that are outrageously horribly the opposite of what they should be for all that there's things they're supposed to do. Maybe some of them won't get through. We'll see. But Republicans, I think, live a life of fear. Republican administrators, they must obey or they will have death threats and be driven out of their home and their security clearance revoked and they'll be primaried and all that. So we're basically living under a Nazi regime of terror.
yeah. I'll tell you, there was a podcast about Guantanamo,
Yeah.
and that was after 9/11. We put prisoners in there and held them.
Yep.
And the sad part is that, according to so there was also an American that was there who became part of the was it the Taliban or ISIS or one of those.
Yep.
So he was American, became indoctrinated. He spent, I believe, 15 years there.
Yeah.
And because he was an American, he knew American laws and could talk to attorneys. But for the first year, they tortured him, Nazi style torture.
Right.
And, after that, they continued for 15 years.
Yep.
What's the purpose, right?
Just and we hold them without charges, no
Right.
rights, and torture them. It is just appalling. And
Yeah.
where he wants to send all the migrants, 30,000 beds supposedly, although like everything Trump says, he hasn't actually got approval. He doesn't have the legal right. He doesn't have the funding. It's not real. It probably won't happen. And this reminds me, the other thing they've done, which is they got copied Elon Musk's memo that he used to fire everybody at Tesla and sent it to every government worker, or most government workers saying, if you retire by next week, we'll promise you 7 months severance pay. So everyone should just get out of there. And this is what Curtis Yarvin, the intellectual leader of the current Nazi regime running America, said. He called it retire all government employees rage. What he wants is to make everyone live in company towns like Hooverville, ruled by CEOs, and end democracy. He said democracy is a mistake, monarchy is the right way to go, and we should just have the superior race of CEOs like Elon Musk rule the states basically as company towns, and everybody will just declare fealty to their local lord and obey him. And that would be a perfect, efficient world. And this is what they're doing. This is what the current Republican Party actually believes in and is creating. And
So, Sam, quick, what's a review of Hoovertown? I know, but just
Hooverville was where everybody
Hooverville.
has to
Yeah.
work for the company. The company owns not only the only factory in town, but all the stores and all the homes. So they pay you in scrip, fake money. So
Yeah.
you have to spend your money at the company store, and they rule it at the whim of the CEO. So this is why Las Vegas exists. At the Hoover Dam, they had a huge, if people would work at the Hoover Dam, they would get paid in scrip. You could not get alcohol or cigarettes or gambling or prostitution. You had to go to church. Everything was all controlled by the boss to be his vision of sort of utopia. And so Las Vegas formed right outside the city limits as the place where they would take the scrip money and they would sell you alcohol. And then they had gambling, and then they had prostitution and cigarettes. So everybody would go out of the town limits to do all the forbidden things. And that created the current situation where Las Vegas continues to serve that purpose for the entire United States. It's the place you can go to do all the things that are forbidden elsewhere.
And they'll take the money because you're not paid
Right, you're not paid
in
with real money,
American
but they would take
dollars.
they would
Yeah.
take the fake money, and this is exactly what he wants to go back to. He thinks of this as utopia, which is amazing, and has defended it. And J.D. Vance is totally on board with it, and Trump, of course, is just kind of a inert, dumb Homer Simpson
Yeah.
figure that just sort of goes along with whatever the people around him tell him to do. Um,
Yeah.
like, I mean, he's not really opposed to abortion or trans people or anything, but he just goes along with it because it's what's popular. Um, eh,
Yeah. That's one way of ruling, right?
it
You
is.
please everybody.
Well, the problem, I mean, the problem is Trump himself is just kind of a bumbling clown with no actual real agenda. But the people around him are, in fact, straight up Nazis. I mean, Elon Musk is absolutely an open card carrying, proud, Zig Heiling Nazi. And J.D. Vance is something very similar. Just wants to make it all ruled by CEOs that are the master race, and we will just shut up and submit and be grateful for what crumbs they feel like giving us. And they're not kidding about it. And trans people just need to stop existing. They just had the executive order to end all trans medical care, although I looked at it, and what they're going to do is, of course, stop all federally funded trans medical care. They're not yet outlawing it everywhere, although that's certainly what J.D. Vance and his gang want. They want to just absolutely outlaw divorce, um, and pornography and all trans care. And the Republicans are in fact going to go against gay marriage, like the Supreme Court justice said they should. Clarence Thomas said when they took away abortion rights, they should also end gay marriage and interracial marriage. They said both of the Supreme Court justices judgments that allowed interracial marriage and gay marriage rest on the same weak foundation, and they should be overthrown too. So it's just amazing where they're taking us, all the way back to like 1930.
I
So,
see. So, Sam, in Michigan, did you see the priest? Pardon, not
yes,
prince,
yeah,
priest.
the priest that gave the sermon and stopped for 5 minutes to say, Trump, you should like have mercy on the poor suffering immigrants. He didn't want to hear that.
So, Calvin Robinson.
Well, maybe it's not the one.
Um, okay, Calvin Robinson made a gesture identical to Elon's.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh,
I,
you did not know
I
this,
expected
yeah.
a lot more of this to be coming. Yeah, I mean,
So he was at Grand Rapids, and he mimicked or copied. It was at a national pro-life summit, and he's now been defrocked.
by which church? Must not be that.
Anglican
Uh,
Catholic Church.
well, that's why. Yeah, the Anglicans and Catholics. Now, if he was a Baptist, he'd probably be fine. But it won't be long. I mean, the evangelical churches, from I've heard it for the last 5 years, the evangelical church meetings have been basically Trump rallies
Yeah.
the last several years. You could probably have the whole crowd chanting Sieg Heil and making that gesture there, and everybody would just donate more money and join. Um, so he just let the Hitler Youth out, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers have just been pardoned. So we're going to have mobs of angry right-wing protesters. And the reason they were in prison was for like tearing down um, mosques and black uh, places where black people gather. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't had it yet, but I mean, we seem to be following exactly the decay of Germany in the 30s. And first they went after the gay people in Germany and the trans people in Germany, just like they're going after them here. You start with a small group that you think everybody will let you oppress, and then you start oppressing more and more people. It should only be about a year away before they start going after the Jews, if they're following the same path.
Well, they already have been for years.
Well, not like the Nazis did it, but
No.
I don't think that's too far away. So it's just incredible. So think,
Sam, I would argue there are a lot of similarities
yeah,
that
I think,
that one can draw a lot of parallels.
well, the incredible
Um,
parallels.
yeah, but there are also pieces that don't match up.
Not yet.
But to be fair, we haven't given enough of time with this experiment yet to see where we're going. So we don't have all the data to do a comparison.
Well, apparently we're going to live through the acquisition of the data. Um,
Yes.
anyway, I've heard good things about Indivisible. I sent them an email. Hopefully, I'll be able to find out what they're doing. They seem to be the only active resistance group. So I'll find out what I can do to support them. Uh, and anyway,
Yeah,
reminds me of the
yeah,
Reagan years when I was in ACT UP. It was a very similar issue, very similar group, and I think I want to be in something active proposing this. I'm not okay to stand by and just watch this happen and not do anything.
yeah. It is interesting. So, since we're talking politics a little bit
Yeah.
here, did you see Trump's claim that Biden's DEI policy of hiring less qualified uh, employees, specifically ATC, was the cause of the accident?
Yeah.
That
Oh, yeah.
was last night.
Sure. That makes just as much sense as saying, the reason why the wildfires went out in Florida or in Los Angeles is the military came in and opened the valve to let the water through, which is just,
Right.
he lives in a fantasy world. He just makes up this crap. I mean, the airplane crash, nobody knows what caused it. He
No,
just
we know
he said it's
we
caused
know
by DEI.
exactly. Yeah, no, we have the video footage.
Yeah.
We also have the dialogue between the tower,
Oh, I
the
didn't know that.
plane.
Okay. What caused it? Do we know?
Yeah, yeah. So first off, what we do know is because we can listen to the recordings and I can share these with you, or
Yeah.
we could post a link up there. But there's an ex-Cal Fire pilot who's now a 747 pilot who analyzes air crash investigations. There's actually another one, but he's out of Nevada City. His name is Juan Brown. He's got a channel on YouTube called the Blanco Lirio Report.
Well,
So what we do know is that the plane was absolutely right on spot, exactly where it should be, altitude wise, lined up for the approach. And we're talking 400, 500 feet. They were doing everything right. No problem there whatsoever at all. They were exactly spot on where they were supposed to be. The air traffic controller was in communication with both the helicopter and the plane, and you can hear in the audio recording that the ATC, it's a woman, talks to the helicopter and says something to the effect, "You have visual separation. Do you have the plane in sight?" And this is legally, this is an important issue, because what this is doing is this is transferring the responsibility from the controller to the pilot of the aircraft, to the helicopter. You can clearly hear that helicopter pilot say, "We have traffic in sight," or "visual contact with traffic." That now completely eliminates the ATC, because now the helicopter pilot is in charge. So, or is responsible for keeping the separation. He knows that there's a plane there. Now we go to the helicopter, and the helicopter is operating at a military frequency, which is different than the civil aviation. So the plane has no knowledge of the helicopter because it's a different frequency of the dialogue that went on there. It's also probable, we don't know for sure, that the military didn't have contact, or the helicopter, because they were on a military frequency, didn't have knowledge of the communication between the ATC and the plane. And that is one of the busiest corridors. You're listening to the traffic. They can barely get in a word edgewise. Now, there's also something that's called TCAS, which is an alarm that if two planes are at the same altitude on a collision course, I should say two aircraft, that it sounds an alarm, but it becomes less once you're below 1,000 feet. All you get is the warning. It doesn't give you the avoidance. So, in other words, TCAS, if you're up higher than 1,000 feet, two planes headed for each other will get an alarm. It'll tell one to climb, one to dive, one to turn left, one to turn right, or both of them to turn left, so they're no longer headed towards each other. So that alarm went off. You can hear that, but it doesn't give you the avoidance because it's below 1,000 feet. The other thing is, if you look at the charts, the aviation charts, that helicopter was supposed to be 100 feet below. They had a ceiling limit because of all the airspace there. They were not supposed to fly, I think, above 200 or 300 feet. They were clearly, if you look at the data from the radar, they were above by 100 feet, which would have put them on a collision course. The last piece is this was a training flight, and it's suspected, we don't know for sure, but it's suspected that they were using night goggles, which would greatly limit their vision with what they were able to see. And if one pilot has it on, then the instructor will also have it on because if the pilot fails, you need to have somebody else that's ready to take over immediately. So it's possible that that also added to it. But the real question is they have a ceiling on their charts that states what their maximum altitude is to keep them clear of landing traffic for the airport. And they had breached that altitude. And that's really what caused it. But then there was also a plane taking off. There were two other planes in the pattern for landing. So it's also believed or thought that they mixed up the two planes that were coming in for a landing, or maybe with the one that took it off that they didn't understand. And we're talking, literally seconds that they had to identify those planes.
Well, I've heard it's a really crowded corridor and there's a lot of near misses there. So,
Yeah, and as Juan Brown says, if you have a plane that's coming right towards you, you're somewhat blinded. But if you have two of them, you don't know which one is moving and which one isn't. It's very difficult to decide, and especially if you're wearing night goggles.
yeah,
But I would argue in this instance, for this accident, it's clearly the helicopter's pilot's fault.
yeah, well, that sounds like it. And I think it'll be a few weeks before we have the official results.
Oh, I think it'll be a year.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
extremely outrageous for Trump to blame it on DEI. And then when they
Yes.
asked him, "Do you have any evidence?" He said, "No, just common sense. Everything is DEI."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is just like the Hitler regime saying, "Well, everything is the Jews." They just
Yeah.
believe everything is DEI. It's their
Yeah. Yeah.
modern, slightly thin paper over just extreme racism being the answer for every problem.
Yeah.
So,
Or it was the communists, right? The Bolsheviks, the
yeah, no,
communists, the
no, we're friends.
Jews.
Putin is the greatest guy on earth. We want to be just like Putin now. Communists are great,
Yeah. Okay.
but not the Chinese communists.
Yeah. Right.
We still
Right.
hate them for some reason. Well, speaking of which, so I got more about DeepMind. So
Okay.
now, DeepMind claimed that they made this large language model with old graphics chips and with only $6 million. And everybody is saying they probably have a big cluster of the latest chips, and they can't admit that because they violated the embargo to get them. Who knows if that's true?
Right.
But one thing that does sound plausible to me, I guess I'm in the same realm as you, I believe the rumors about this, is they said they trained it with reinforcement learning, where they would ask humans whether this is the right answer or not. And I said, I highly doubt that. And now it's turned out, apparently, what people say, and I can't prove any of this, but they say is they used a technique called distillation, where they do what I thought. They asked, like ChatGPT, is it the right answer? That's the way
Yeah.
you can get like a million training results quickly. And they say this is common. People use other people's AIs for yours to learn off of. Now, it's not like you just stole the weights and copied the weights into your model, but you used other people's living AI to ask questions to improve your model, to create useful data. And they say people, in fact, do this all the time. They call it distillation, and it's sort of disapproved of by some people, but they all say this is how you get it done. And so they suspect they did that. They say it's par for the course in the AI industry. And therefore, they didn't really develop it from zero for $6 million. They piggybacked off the other models that were out there. So that might be true. But anyway,
Yeah.
we'll see. But I think there's no question that the Chinese are definitely caught up with us and probably at a much lower cost. So this means, from a financial point of view, they say the big winner of this is Apple, because everyone's been criticizing Apple because as Google and Microsoft and everybody is pouring billions into AI, Apple is not. And they say, why aren't you building a huge cluster of GPUs and developing AI? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Why should we bother? And now apparently they're the only one that's not a fool investing all this money in what looks like the wrong direction.
Yeah.
They say they seem to be by staying out of the early stages, they may have saved billions. And
Interesting, huh?
well, and the other thing that's kind of interesting, which is also, I think, par for the course, is that DeepSeek didn't secure their database at all. People found it's just an open Amazon database. They were able to get in there and execute arbitrary queries, and they say you can probably do privilege escalation, just take over the environment. They were able to dump out the logs of everybody's requests. Uh, they just found it listening on port 9000 with chat history, backend data, sensitive information, log streams, API secrets, and operational details, which, that's pretty common for all these startups. Nobody actually thinks about security. They just
Right.
set it up and get it going. And after they
Yeah.
told them, they secured it. So, uh, that's I think also par for the course. Anybody with a new hot product is just trying to get it out the door, and they don't think about security until later.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyways, despite all our political disagreements with China, we do seem to have what we should have, a healthy environment of competition, and it's open source. They released all the source publicly for everybody, which is more than OpenAI does. So I
Yeah.
don't I don't think we can accuse the Chinese of much misbehavior here. I think they're behaving entirely like traditional capitalist competitors,
Yeah. Yeah. And
playing in the
yeah.
marketplace. That's why, I think this is healthy, actually.
Yeah. Well, isn't this similar to after World War II when the Russians, we were shocked that they had the bomb?
Well, yeah, well, that's scarier, of course. Well, I mean, other people are
Yeah.
this afraid of AI as they are of the bomb. I'm not that afraid of it,
Yeah.
but I think it's, this is what I'm hoping would happen. We'll have many companies developing AI until the best product hopefully will win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
So, Sam, I got a question. Do you ever go shopping at Walgreens?
No, in fact, I hear they're closing, but they could close them all, and I would never care. I
Yeah.
think I've been there in 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah. So this is Walgreens. Some people, sources say it was Walmart, but it's not. It's Walgreens.
Well, Walmart
So,
I've been to, and especially down south, Walmart is really important, but Walgreens,
okay.
I don't even know why they exist.
Well, drug company, and I think they go back hundred years, more than 100 years or
Yeah,
so,
well,
or thereabouts. And I
CVS is
can't,
the only one I see now.
yeah, CVS, but wasn't Walgreens the one that partnered with Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos?
Oh, I think they did, but I think a lot of people did.
Yeah, well, Safeway did as well, but I
Yeah,
think Walgreens was
yeah.
all in. Yeah. Anyway, this is beside the point. So Walgreens, like CVS, they're struggling to stay in business.
Are people buying their drugs over the internet? I would think that would be the wave of the future, just like Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. So listen, I will tell you, I can't remember if it was CVS and or Walgreens, but about 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of talk about getting people's prescriptions through Walgreens, Walmart, or Walgreens and CVS. That they were doing some illegal things with the government and with people. There was deception involved.
Yeah,
And I believe that they were fined. I'm not positive on that. I didn't follow the story,
yeah.
but I was aware of it. Anyway, forget all that. But so in terms of where people are getting their drugs now, Amazon has got a real
Right.
push.
That's what I thought.
And
Yep. And I get
yeah,
mine from Kaiser directly because I
yeah,
have Kaiser. They just mail it to my home. I never have to go to drugstore at all.
yeah. See, there you go. Right. Okay. So interesting story. Walgreens decided to replace their freezer and refrigerator doors with LCD displays.
Okay.
Pretty clever.
They got smart
So
fridges.
they have, well, advertising fridges.
Okay.
So the new doors are playing ads to you. But the problem is the company that they partnered with, it didn't do so well. And they're having some glitches. So the problem is now the doors are dark.
Yeah. Well,
So you can't see through the glass to see what's on the inside.
yeah.
And I'm not sure, but I think when you walked up to the door, they would display what's inside if there was no ad, or so you could see what was in there. The problem is there wasn't a camera. It was a stocked shelf.
Yep.
So you look in there and you say, "Oh, I want to buy, some orange juice or I want to buy a quart of milk." And oh, I can see that there are 20 bottles in there. You open the door, there might not be any.
Yep. Brave New World.
So I don't know. I'm kind of dying to go into a Walgreens that has one. I don't know where they've been installed, but a failure is
Yep.
what I would argue.
I would like it if it had the blue screen of death on there. That would be the next thing. But
Well, that was the Samsung refrigerators.
yeah.
Or not quite, but yeah, the equivalent, the Linux equivalent.
Yeah.
Linux did an update. The Samsung refrigerators were updated,
Yeah.
and the displays on the refrigerator displayed an error message. And
Yeah.
Samsung said, "We're not going to fix it."
There's so much unnecessary smart stuff. Like, I'm telling you before we started, I had a student,
Yeah,
all your devices are infected. She said, it might be in my TV. And I said, yeah, it could be. I don't have any smart anything. I don't have a smart car. I don't have a smart light
yeah,
bulb, a smart doorbell, a smart TV. So, I leave a simple life.
yeah,
You don't need all these
yeah.
complicated gadgets.
Well, you know what's interesting though is all the people that claim that they're going to dump Elon's products, specifically, oh, I bought a Tesla. Elon made his money off of me, but I just can't support Elon anymore. I'm selling the car and I'm going to buy a different one.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is Elon's getting money for the government. If you buy another EV, your tax money is directly supporting EV in terms of rebates and
Well, yeah.
tax credits.
Well, yeah, that's right. You can't totally escape it, but if I had a Tesla, I'd probably want to sell it too. I'd try to minimize my connection to that guy.
Yeah, but how much money? Yeah, well, but the problem is if you already bought a Tesla,
Yeah.
Elon's already made his money off of you.
Yeah.
If you want a charging network, you want the Tesla charging network.
Yeah.
And people are saying, well, I'll never charge at a Tesla charging station again. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But how much money you think Tesla charging network is making off the electricity? A couple pennies?
I don't know.
I do know from someone that I spoke to, it's less than what gasoline stations make selling gas.
Yeah, well, I think you're right that that is a relatively ineffective form of protest. Like say, I'm
Yeah,
looking for more powerful forms of protest. I'm hoping maybe Indivisible has good plans. I really think anybody who would rather not live under a Nazi regime really starts engaging in serious resistance. Although there was a guy that actually took like supposedly Molotov cocktails and a knife and went to Washington to kill Republicans, and I don't recommend that. Although he just seems to be nuts. These Molotov cocktails were 50 milligram or 50 milliliter bottles with vodka. So I really don't think there was that much threat of them in it. But still, this is going to increase our political violence, especially now that Trump led all the violent protesters from January 6th out. And I think that's an inevitable consequence of a time of political unrest, but I don't want to go that way.
right, right. That makes no sense either.
Oh, this is how you actually overthrow government sometimes with civil war and all
Yeah,
that, but I don't
yeah,
really want to be part of that. But it is a consequence of really serious political abuse.
yeah, yeah, I would agree. It's interesting. I'm seeing all these protests
Yeah,
about immigration, ICE being or Guantanamo being set up,
yeah.
border patrol, all of that. And I'm also seeing protests just about a lot of things that Trump's doing. So what do? They go out and they block streets and they're protesting. That's their right. I get that. But what does that actually accomplish at the end of the day?
Supposedly, it did end the Vietnam War. What I've heard is that the reason Nixon finally ended the war is there was such unrest in the street that Kissinger and his advisors told him, you really can't raise any more soldiers out of these people to send to Vietnam. They won't put up with it. And he finally to finally end the war. So I think there is a point. And like, remember when Trump first got in, they had the Million Woman March or something.
Yeah.
When you really have millions of people in the street and like a general strike, there's a point when that does have an effect. But you really need a large number of people basically freezing the whole country.
Sam, I will disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
I believe the pivotal moment when so during the Vietnam War, you kind of
Yeah,
had the young people against the World War II generation. In terms of the World War II, as we fought for our country,
yeah,
what's wrong with you kids? Go fight for the country.
right.
You're right. There were protests that were going on. There was fake information, fake news, misinformation,
Yeah.
disinformation that was given to the public. And the number one broadcaster that America trusted was Walter Cronkite at the time.
Yeah.
And there's a famous, I think he was on CBS, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And there's a famous kind of heart-to-heart talk where he takes off his glasses. I remember this somewhat well. I studied this in college. But he took off his glasses and he said, "You know, Mr. President, I can no longer support you with the war in Vietnam." And I believe that is what changed or turned the older generation, which then led to the events that you're talking
Well,
about.
it all goes together. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
this,
it's a
it
package deal.
reminds me of, for example, gay rights. 40 years ago, almost nobody supported gay rights, and there was sort of a melting of the ice, like 20 years ago, when suddenly everybody supported gay rights and gay marriage. These things just sort of spread through a culture, and you can't point to one cause.
Right,
There's
right.
a
Yeah,
shift.
yeah.
I mean, there's a time when the whole nation just shifted against the Vietnam War, and they said nobody's going to put up with this anymore. And so I think the people marching in the street are part of it.
Well, yeah, yeah, maybe that's an early part that's the
Yeah,
primer.
yeah.
But I don't think today we have somebody like a Walter Cronkite. Would that be a Joe Rogan?
Well, that's of course the big issue, and that's why, the Trump administration is correct, I think, in their press corps to say we're really not going to give like the cable TV channels the prime position and freeze everybody else out. We're going to let
Yeah,
in the podcasters and the YouTube people and everything because that's the way people really get information now. So I think, but we're much less unified in our information, and that's part of the division in our society. One thing that's amazing is like the right wingers, the Republicans, they've tested them, and they don't absorb any normal news at all. This is certainly true of right wingers I know. They never get any accurate news at all. They read nothing but lies. Far right stuff, all they read is conspiracy theories and crazy science fiction stuff, and they don't ever hear the truth about anything.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is an amazing thing. And I think, I remember this was predicted about 10 years ago about the internet. They said when Google starts having personalized search, everybody will just be in a bubble and they'll go down a rabbit hole where everything reinforces the ideas they want to hear and they drift out of reality into sort of a science fiction world. And that's certainly what's happened with the alt-right now, which seems to be the mainstream right.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I
yeah,
know they changed the MSNBC lineup. Rachel Maddow's back, and Alex Wagner, that used to have her show, is now interviewing Trump supporters. And she says you have to understand these people all believe that the 2020 election was stolen, that everything Trump says is true, that there's a conspiracy against him, that all the elections are rigged, and just a whole bunch of crazy stuff. They've all drifted very far from reality. And that,
yeah,
I don't know how you get back. You're right. The lack of like a national figure like Walter Cronkite means we don't even agree on what the facts are anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this is kind of interesting. The argument that's used a lot of times when scientific evidence is produced is like especially with vaccinations is sort of an example. But he was saying that the argument that is used is let's look at the other side, or let's give the other side, equal time so we can hear their point of view.
Yeah.
So Neil deGrasse Tyson said, so when somebody says the earth is round, should we give equal time to the
Yeah.
flat earthers?
And that is where we are. That's what they do.
Yeah,
That's exactly
yeah,
it. And that's why the other thing she said they all believe is that COVID was fake, the vaccine was
right,
fake, and Fauci should be jailed because he lied to us and destroyed our nation with lies. And it reminds me of like the cigarette company saying cigarettes don't cause cancer. They've
right,
caused people to miss it. The thing about science is it's not 100% accurate and it keeps changing. You have a theory, and then you have another theory. That's what happened to Fauci. First, he said, "Don't wear masks. The masks aren't going to help you." But then they changed. They discovered, well, the masks do help you, so you should wear them. And then he said the vaccine will stop it in its tracks like smallpox. It'll be gone. And they said, well, the vaccine doesn't really stop it that well. And so they say, you're just lying to us. I said, well, he's doing the best he can with science, but you could also say he's just lying to you because it does keep changing. And
Yeah. So, here's the thing with science
yeah,
is we learn more, science is self-correcting.
I know. And
And so as we think that the masks don't do any good, we do
yeah,
experiments, we find that they do good.
that's right.
But then we might do experiments and find that some masks don't do any good and
Yeah.
other masks do work. So,
And so the
you know,
problem is people want to hear like a dogmatic statement like Donald Trump, do this thing and it will be right. Like a
right.
religious,
Drink Clorox.
yeah, they're expecting the religious leader to issue an edict and that will be the answer. They don't
Yeah.
understand that science is a process of successive approximation. But the end, this is why you can sell them the statement saying Fauci is in a conspiracy. He's just lying to you to push to shut down all the churches with this fake disease so the government can crush the God out of our lives, which is kind of what they believe. And you can see how they end up believing that because of the natural consequence of revealing science the way he did in all of its truth, which is not that impressive. So
Yeah.
it's
So, Sam, do you know where RFK Jr. is in his appointment?
they are interviewing him. He's being grilled. He's being caught, just like most of the Trump appointees, absolutely trying to lie when they have tape of him saying the opposite thing. And the question, it's just the same as all of them. He is plainly, completely insane, completely unfit. By the way, something Elizabeth Warren pointed out, which I did not know, is he is involved in lawsuits. He will get a percentage of all the lawsuits against vaccines and stuff. That's why he lies. He's a paid shill, just like the people that get paid to tell you that cigarettes don't cause cancer. And
Yeah.
that's how he
Yeah.
makes his money. So but the question just remains of whether Republicans will just have a party line vote to put him in. They did that for Hegseth, even though Hegseth is clearly a drunk and a rapist. And there were several Republicans who were going to go against him, and they had private meetings and terrified those Republican senators into getting in line and voting for him. Even one woman whose whole mission has been to prevent rape in the military. And they convinced her to vote for Hegseth, who is totally a rapist in the military. Um, that would encourage more of it. So the ability of the current Republican Party to force their own members to line up out of some kind of fear is very large. So they may push all these appointments through. It's everybody knows these are insane appointments that will destroy massive government agencies, but they may get through anyway. We're going to see.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there was an executive order that was put through that bans aid drugs from being, I believe, exported or sent to Africa.
Oh, I think they've ended essentially all aid to foreign nations. Yeah.
No, this is AIDS drugs.
Yeah, but I'm not just age drugs, but I think the basic
Oh,
thing is all
oh,
all,
okay.
all money
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
out of the country to help anybody. Yeah.
So RFK Jr. is saying that AIDS is a toxin.
Right. He says that AIDS in Africa is different than AIDS here, and it's not caused by the HIV virus. And
Yeah.
he says
Yeah.
that I think pesticides cause people to become trans or something. He just has basically every wacky, stupid medical theory you can come up with.
Yeah, and what's interesting is if you look at his website, his testimony that he's giving
Yeah.
is contradicting what's on his website.
Of course. Yes,
Yeah,
contradicting what he said, because
yeah,
he's just paid to lie. That's how he
right.
makes his money. And he thinks he can get
Well,
away with it,
he's an
which,
attorney. Yeah, he's an attorney, and his goal is not to use science but rhetoric to win in a court of law.
and I must say, Trump has demonstrated that just shamelessly lying, contradicting yourself, and making up fantasies constantly seems to be the road to political success on the Republican side.
Yeah,
He's like all of them. He's learned a lesson from Trump and now Elon that all you have to do is just make up whatever lie people want to hear, and
yeah,
and nobody will ever care.
yeah,
It seems
yeah,
to be true on that side.
yeah.
But
I
you know that there are some people in the middle that actually determined the election, like 5%, and they are not really on board with all this crazy stuff. They just sort of were fed up with Biden being too old, and the Democrats, and they sort of thought that Trump might lower inflation or something. And I think they might well decide that they're not getting what they paid for by voting for him.
Well, 4 year, well, 2 years to a
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah. I mean, that's why my sister said the Democrats really need to reform. And I said, no, all the Democrats need to do is tread water and wait for the Republicans to destroy themselves because they
Yeah.
really only lost by 1%. And probably in 2 or 4 years, people will be pretty fed up with Trump and they'll be able to get that 1% back. All they have to do is tread water and wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
If all they
Yeah.
care about is victory. But the problem is, if they, the way they're going, there won't be an election. So
We will see. Experiment in progress.
we will. Anyway, I got some technical stuff that's kind of fun.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Let's switch gears
so
here.
I had, when the Trump coin came out and the Melania coin came out, I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'll give my students a homework task of making a meme coin. How hard is it? Well, I found there's this place called uh, pump.fun. You just fill out a you just upload an image, click go, and now you have a meme coin. So it's so easy, it's not even a homework project. You can just, it's one click and blam, you have a meme coin. So they have thousands of meme coins there with market capitalization of like $5,000. So, nothing. And anyway, it turns out that they didn't secure their supply chain, so hackers compromised that tool. And the Windows version of it will now like infect your machine and steal your cryptocurrency keys and such. Developers say malicious threat actor compromised their private GitHub repository after reverse engineering the software to extract a GitHub token. So this is not too surprising that such a complete sort of scam joke thing is not secured properly, but it did point out something that again they brought out in Pulse Security Weekly that I thought was important. When you're a developer, there are secrets. There's API keys, GitHub tokens, passwords, and stuff. And where do you put them? Some people put them in plain text files that you share, but then people put that file on the GitHub. Some people put them in environment variables, but apparently those are not safe. So apparently the right thing to do is secrets management products. And there is something called Vault. I got to learn how this works that sets up some kind of network-based secrets management system, sort of like a enterprise class password manager. And that is apparently the correct place to put these secrets when you're doing software development. And so it's an important issue. And I'd like to work this out. In fact, I've got students working on the MITRE hardware hacking
Yeah.
project, and they had the same thing. They're supposed to put on all this encryption. And I said, well, where are you going to put the key? And I haven't got a really clear answer out of them yet. And I know from doing hundreds of Android app security audits that the same problem happens there. They have encryption, but then where do you put the key? And wherever you put it, it seems like all the obvious places mean somebody can steal it. And I've done that for hundreds of Android apps. I found the key, stolen it, reverse engineered it. It's pretty easy to do. So I'd like to learn about this secrets management product and find out how it works. We really need that. Now, by the way, I do know on phones, there is a place to put the key. Apple has a thing called File Vault or something, and Android has a
Yes.
similar thing. The operating system has a place to put secrets that is encrypted and be controlled by the operating system. It's a little hard to use, and as far as I can tell, 90% of developers don't bother to use it because it's so annoying. But there is a place to put secrets built in the operating system, and this Vault product is apparently the enterprise version of that. But but this is an issue. Most developers just sort of have some sloppy temporary way to put secrets up while they're developing, and then they roll to production without fixing that problem.
Yeah. So here, this is interesting. Pump.fun faces class action lawsuit over alleged unregistered security sales. That just came out today.
Oh, well, that's another issue, of course. What they're doing might be violating the Securities Exchange Commission. They are basically just printing their own money.
Right.
All the meme coins are, and that would appear to violate some major laws. How did you mention it? But it's been going on for about a decade with all the the NFTs and all the cryptocurrencies. I remember when I was a kid, they said you can't just print your own money. Only the Federal Treasury can do it, but we've been doing it.
Right.
Cryptocurrency space has been just printing their own money all along and somehow getting away with it, claiming that what
Yeah.
they're doing is not exactly the same as just printing your own money. And as far as I know, they couldn't make up their mind whether to treat it as a commodity or a work of art or a stock. It's unclear which regulatory framework actually applies to cryptocurrency. They're still fighting about that.
Yeah, and how long has Bitcoin been about? Been
I,
around 10
I think
years?
it's, yeah, well, I think like 15 years now.
Yeah, yeah. And we still haven't figured that out yet.
No, there's a huge battle about it because they have so much money, they're basically bribing the government to push it one way or another. And now they've got David
Yeah.
Sachs right at the top of the Trump administration, and he's a major crypto whale. So it's
It is interesting when Trump speaks, he always puts in a little and crypto, and we'll be supporting crypto, or crypto's the future.
they bribed him. He's
Yeah,
he got money from TikTok, so suddenly he loves TikTok. It's government for sale. It's a cash register. You
yeah,
put in money, out comes whatever legislation you want.
yeah. And I think if you read Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah,
That's what it's about, is making deals.
sure. That's his whole life, just how to
Yeah,
make more money by making deals. And
yeah.
this is you can have governments run this way, just totally corrupt. It's kleptocracy. That's where we are. Yeah. Anyway, this one is kind of incredible. There's a guy named Brian Johnson who is a biohacker, and there's a thing you can buy called Adam, where you wear a cock ring while you sleep, and it monitors your erection while you're asleep and puts it in an app so you can publish it. So he wore this, and his son wore it, and he published like the reports of how long his nighttime erections are compared to his son. There are people who think this is the way to track your health now. And this is one of those things where, no, this has to be the Onion. Nobody would do this. But it's like the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, really has an app to track porn on his phone, and his son has the app so they can compare and make sure nobody's watching any porn. And this is the same thing. This is a new health tracker, a new crazy
Well,
thing to do.
right. It's kind of like period tracker for women. This
Well,
is the male version.
I guess it is. And I suppose it. I remember Tucker Carlson about 5 years ago had this thing where you stick your testicles in red light to like promote more testosterone and make you more manly. That was his big thing for a while. And there is a
Yeah,
huge thing on the right now of men need to have more testosterone and Trump is like daddy. There's a whole masculine sexual dominance thing going on the right.
yeah. So, Sam, do you know what this whole red light treatment is to grow hair, to whiten teeth?
Well,
What's the deal with red light?
I tell you, I didn't believe it. And apparently, my sister actually had this because she had knee problems. There apparently is real medical treatment taken seriously where they take in a hospital where they subject you to really bright red light and your joint will like warm up for like a day. It promotes blood flow and stuff. There is some actual red light therapy. Now, the home stuff is apparently so weak it doesn't really do anything. But there is, in fact, light therapy is a real thing. I didn't believe it and I looked into it. Um,
Well, oh, right, but light therapy, are we talking about infrared heat?
Uh, it's more than that. Some very bright red light exposed on a joint actually promotes blood flow and healing for an injured joint or something.
Well,
It,
that would be heat.
I think it's not just heat because it lasts a lot
Okay.
longer than like a heating pad would. For like the
Oh,
whole
okay.
like the
Okay.
whole next day, your joint is warmer. Somehow it does promote blood flow or something. There is some legitimate part of this that's real, but I think a lot of it is just quack pseudoscience, the stuff you hear about.
Yeah, well, the stuff that I think grows hair and the stuff that whitens teeth, those
I,
are cheap LEDs and
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
ripoff that
I
does
think so.
nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was all garbage, but then I looked into it. There is a serious medical light treatment that's much more powerful
Okay.
that actually does something like promote blood flow. But
I I want to look into that. That sounds
yeah,
kind of interesting. I think
yeah,
it's far-fetched,
it is.
but
But I mean, it is true that the light will penetrate in there and warm things up and maybe do something else.
yeah, I mean, it is true. But what's interesting is we use light to measure blood flow, right?
Right.
That's what the Apple Watch is doing.
Sure.
But what's odd is they use green light. They don't
Well,
use red.
well, sure. That's because you're looking at the oxygen content of the blood. I mean, this is what I used to do in my research in
Yeah.
proteins. I mean, blood turns blue when the oxygen falls off. So by watching the color of your skin, you can see the blood go through and measure
Well,
stuff.
yeah. So this can penetrate. The green light
Right.
penetrates a little bit more than red light.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can go into the vein and then you can see the
Yeah.
blood going through. Sure. That's what we did. Yeah.
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 Okay.
And that
Anyway,
anyway, so see if there's anything else exciting here. Oh, there's an article called "The Protester's Guide to Smartphone Security," which a guy on Paul's Security Weekly pointed out that's really very good. Something I'll pass on to my students. It has, the 10 things you should do to secure your smartphone if you're worried about it, which are all pretty good, reasonable stuff.
Okay.
It's nice to have these guides. They help me deal with the people that come to me with like their problems at home. Um, so that
Yeah,
was
it's a good
useful.
checklist for them, right?
Yeah, like CISA has put out like a good one for small business, which I've actually used for talks. Now I can
Yeah,
actually help small businesses improve your security, and I can back it up with an official document that makes it much more authoritative. So I
yeah.
appreciate that. Um, and there's a couple others that I thought were amazing. The best, most fun is hacking Subaru. There's an article from people that decided to find out how secure Subaru was. And what they found was there's a Starlink website, the administration panel, and they found an unprotected API or an open secret, available secret where they could reset anybody's password. And so then they just went on the forums and found the names of some Subaru employees, reset one of their passwords, got in, and then they were not an administrator, but they were in the panel. So they found an admin portal that you could get in. But when they went into the admin portal, this two-factor authentication box popped up. Type in the key from your two-factor token. But all they had to do was go into inspect in the browser and take that pop-up box off the browser. And then they were into the live panel. So that's the part that amazed me. That is like such a terrible way to do it, where it wasn't really disabling the admin function until you put it in. It was just popping up a box on top that all you have to do is get rid of the pop-up, poof, and you're in. And so they were able to find in there control of the Subarus. They can, and also a whole year of history with the full location of everywhere that Subaru has been. And he tracked his mother and found,
No.
oh yeah, and you can find it for anybody. You can see he has a graph of all the places his mother's been in the last year. You can totally see their church, their workplace, their home, their gym, and everything. And that's available to anybody. So, it's pretty extreme. They say quite a few of them this way. So this is, the thing about security is that people have these smart devices, then they hook it all to the internet, then they make a web page controlling it all, and all that stuff is frequently made sloppily without enough security. So this is why we need all the ethical hackers in the world pointing out these flaws and getting companies to clean up. And if you made all the devices in our lives smart, we created all these new vulnerabilities and the security has not caught up.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
yeah, that was
All
a
right, you
fun
got
one.
another one? I got one more story for
Go
you.
ahead.
All right, this is taking place in Oakland, California,
Yeah.
and it was reported by social media people and local TV station that a number of the brass plaques, I think there were 150 of them, 75 of them were stolen, and they commemorate musicians, kind of blues musicians, kind of downtown Oakland,
Mhm.
where all the black clubs used to be, which is along the BART tracks. For people that know the area, it was called 7th Street. And a lot of really well-known blues musicians had played, sang there.
Mm.
So there have been, I believe, 150 plaques. 75 were stolen out of the sidewalk. They were pulled up. So the value is claimed to be $150,000.
Just selling them as brass or what?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know what the salvage value of brass is, but the plates are gone. The claim is 150,000 is
Well,
what
I
they're
know people
worth.
steal like copper pipes just for the copper in them. I don't know if,
Yeah, copper pipes, copper wire, same
yeah,
thing. You sell it to the metal recyclers.
yeah.
Okay. So people have gone down there and saying, I'm down here. I don't see any missing blacks. Here's photographs. Here's a video footage. I'm
Oh,
walking along the sidewalk where all the plaques have been claimed to be stolen.
oh,
Yet for the original one, you can see again TV news, KTVU, as well as people were posting in social media areas of the sidewalk where you could clearly see the plaque was missing. So now the question is, do we have fake news or is this fake news? So, as
Yeah.
it turns out, the original post specifically stated on 7th Street between the two streets that the plaques were missing.
Hmm.
The people that were posting saying, I don't see any plaques missing, are by the BART station, which is several blocks in away from where the plaques are missing. So it's now fake news that the plaques are really there. So the real news is, yes, they were stolen, and there's a GoFundMe, and they've kind of discredited the people or the person and the organization that's claiming that the plaques were originally stolen. So you kind of have an attack here or doxing against somebody that really is a victim of a crime, as if we haven't seen this before.
Well, that sounds somewhat understandable. I mean, it's just different parts of the story come out at different times.
Yeah, but what's interesting is, forget the story, the social media responses
Yeah.
of how you have people saying this is a lie, and people are saying no, it's not a lie. People are saying yes, it is. The plaques are really stolen. I was there, I saw it. No, you weren't. I don't believe you. And it just kind of goes back and forth.
Well, it reminds me of what we were saying about like the COVID restrictions. You have some information, then you have some other information, then you have some more information, and things fly back and forth.
Well, the thing is, though, the original story said it was between Willow and Wood Street in
Yeah.
Oakland.
Yeah.
The BART station is a few blocks away from Willow
Yeah.
and Wood.
Yeah.
So unless you go down there, which is sort of out of the way,
Yeah.
you wouldn't know.
Yeah. So I mean, it's as things usually go. The actual information was true, but then people exaggerated it and misunderstood it. Yeah.
Yeah, or it's disinformation,
Yeah.
right? Misinformation, disinformation. So what's true here is that both stories are true.
Yeah.
That not all the plaques were stolen,
Some of
but
them.
that wasn't what the claim was.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
some of the plaques were stolen, but they didn't look at where the plaques were stolen. So if you don't look where the plaques are stolen, you wouldn't see that they're stolen.
Yeah. That
So,
makes sense.
those people are saying, I don't see any stolen
Yeah.
plaques,
Yeah.
which is a true statement as well.
Yeah.
So we get into the semantics, which is what RFK Jr. is doing, as well as Trump is doing. So again, this is going to be an interesting societal experiment that we're looking at here.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And I got one more infosec
Okay.
that was you remember Spectre and Meltdown, right? For the
Yes.
last 10 years, we've had this really dubious way to make processors perform better, where they start executing an instruction and then they begin executing several instructions beyond this one, so it's ready. And if there's an if statement saying, no, don't execute those instructions, it's already begun to execute them. And so there are clues, like in the cache, of those forbidden instructions, so you can read past an if statement in the code and see things you're not supposed to see. And so they've been trying to fix those. I remember when this came out about 10 years ago, they said we're going to have new generations of hardware to fix it. Well, we now have the new generation of hardware, and it did not fix it. The Apple developed their own Apple Silicon, the M1, M2, and M3, and it turns out that the new Apple Silicon has invented a new form of speculative execution, which creates a new form of the speculative execution vulnerabilities. So this affects the
Mhm.
M2 Apple and later. They have two kinds of speculative execution, one where they attempt to predict the address you're going to read from, and one where they attempt to predict the data you're going to read. And there is an attack where you do many reads of something to make it think this is what I'm reading, and then change it, and it jumps ahead to the wrong place in both cases. So it's quite effective. They're able to exploit the MacBook Air with M2, M3, and M4, and just a browser page is able to see secrets you're not supposed to see, just like the original Spectre and Meltdown had the same thing. So these things keep happening over and over again, and again, they'll just have to add some kind of mitigation somewhere, which is going to be limited and relatively ineffective, just like all the Spectre and Meltdown mitigations are, because you can't fix the actual fundamental problem without replacing the hardware. So it's a thing to be
Yeah.
aware of. As far as I can tell, all processors are still vulnerable to an endless chain of these speculative execution attacks. Um, They
And
keep,
are these remote execution?
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
you view a
Just
malicious
checking.
web page, and with JavaScript, they're able to trick it,
Okay. Yeah,
revealing secrets that you're not supposed to reveal. So there's a fundamental limit to this, the level of security you can get out of these chips. Now, of course, they do keep patching the exact attacks that are known, but the fundamental flaw remains, which is true of a lot of our security. You know, there's a lot of people have insecure web pages, and so they try to put like a web application firewall in front of it, where they don't actually fix the flaw, but they try to block the doors you're coming through. That is one way to
yeah,
protect things, and that's basically how all our processors are right now. They're fundamentally vulnerable, and they have a sort of imperfect layer that tries to stop the attacks that would punch through.
I see.
So,
I see.
uh,
Interesting, huh?
we don't seem to have the technology of making a processor that can avoid doing this. Now, you could quit doing speculative execution, but apparently that would cost such a performance hit that nobody's willing to settle for that. Everybody is continuing to build in this speculative execution, but nobody seems to find any way to do it without opening up security vulnerabilities.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
But anyway,
Yeah,
that's where we are.
yeah. Hey, Sam, I'll leave you. That's your last story, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I got one more sort of for you. This is kind of interesting. I'm seeing, as we use license plate recognition, LPR,
Right.
right? We use that for the tolls crossing the bridge, that you can get a little transponder, or they do license plate recognition and send you a bill.
And they seem to be
So,
just putting it all over towns everywhere.
yeah, and it's also for the HOV lanes on the freeways.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing is, and I know I've told you this before, is people are doctoring their license plates to prevent the plates from being read.
Yeah, that would seem really easy. Just go and put like masking tape on it to turn like one number to another.
Well, yeah, but what they're doing is actually a little bit clever. I've seen some people when I'm driving down the freeway that they put paint over some of the letters that prevent the reflectivity of it.
Yeah, that might.
And so if you're looking at the plate direct head on from the back, you can read the plate, but if you go off to the side a little bit, you can't read the plate or it's blacked out. I've also seen it where you take the little tab for the year on your, every year you get a little strip.
Yeah,
You get the year that you put on, but there's also a little quarter-inch strip, and people are taking those and putting those to make like an O look like a Q, because that's got the reflective
yeah,
paint or
yeah,
tech, technology in there, so that when a bright light hits it, it also lights up. And the whole goal here, obviously, is to confuse the cameras.
yeah. Probably works pretty well.
I wonder.
I know in my machine learning course we
Yeah.
make evasion attacks, and just adding a little bit of dirt and snow to an image will greatly confuse machine learning. So while a couple of bright spots added to it probably would greatly degrade its ability to accurately read those letters.
Yeah. Again, I don't know. But people are doing it, and I'm wondering if police are going to start pulling people over for that.
Yeah, I think it is illegal to deface your license
Oh,
plate.
yeah, it is.
And
Right.
so, yeah, I think it's technically illegal, but I'm sure it goes on.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Anyway, that's for me today.
Yeah, that's it,
And
I think.
yeah, we're going to be joined back in Tuesday, right? Which is a
Yeah.
new month,
Yeah, we'll be back on Tuesday. All right.
Tuesday the 4th.